Grace and peace. I'm Brian Musser, the Baptist Campus Minister at Drexel University, and this is Peace and Power Christian Fellowship, the peace of Jesus Christ to change our lives and the power of the Holy Spirit to change our world. We are continuing our series through Genesis 1 through 11, the meaning of creation. Where does humanity belong? This is the 7th lesson in this series. We're talking about, can it get worse? We're looking at the story of Cain and Abel. We've just finished the story of the fall of humanity in the introduction of sin into creation, and then we see this next story shows things are getting worse. So answer the question, yes, it can get worse, and we'll examine how it gets worse moving forward. So first we're going to talk about the offering between Cain's offering and Abel's offering and look at that part of the story. So we are in Genesis 4. We'll be looking at verses 1 through 7 in this first video of the 7th lesson. So now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flocks and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. So this is the passage. These are the offerings, and just some interesting notes here, connecting it to the previous passage. Adam knew his wife. Knew is a common ancient Hebrew euphemism for sex, but it also connects this story to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and how after eating it they knew they were naked. So specifically using this word to connect it to chapter 3 to make it known to the reader that these passages are in communication with each other. She conceived and bore Cain. God's command to be fruitful and multiply from Genesis 1:28 is still intact, and the hope for offspring to continue and ultimately win the battle with the serpent from Genesis 3:15 is being fulfilled. So this idea is that even though humanity is now fallen, the curse now exists, some things are still going to be true. It's still going to be true that humanity should be fruitful and multiply. It's still going to be true, as it was included in the curse to the serpent, that humanity will still have offspring, and this offspring will ultimately crush the serpent. So some things have drastically changed because of the fall, but other things still remain intact. The be fruitful and multiply is still going to be something that we see throughout this passage. So names. Cain is named, and it sounds like a play on the word gotten. The meaning of Eve's explanation for the name Cain is debated. Is she showing gratefulness to God for Cain, or is she diminishing God's role in the birth of Cain? I have gotten a man with God's help. We can't really tell the tone of that statement very much. The meaning of Abel's name is not explained because this story is about Cain. Often Abel is referred to as Cain's brother throughout the story. So his name is not explained, even though it has a very interesting meaning. Abel's name is a play on the word breath or vapor, and could be a foreshadowing of his fate. So even though Abel's name would play into the story very, very easily and be an important, interesting facet to the story, the author chooses not to explain Abel's name because Abel's not the point of the story. Cain is the point of the story. So now they bring offerings. Cain is a farmer who works the ground like his father, Adam. Abel is a shepherd. Both bring an offering. And it's important to notice that it's an offering, and the word is an offering, in The Torah, especially in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, this word can mean grain offering. It can mean also like animal sacrifice, but it's a very broad word that can mean a bunch of different things. It's not necessarily a sacrifice, not just a sacrifice. A lot of commentators will try to say that Abel's offering was accepted and Cain's wasn't because Abel brought a blood sacrifice, brought an animal, whereas Cain only brought fruits and vegetables or something grown. And that isn't the word here. The word here is offering, and it can be the first readers, Moses' audience of this, would have seen that word and known that word can mean anything from a grain offering to a blood sacrifice. It just is that generic of a word. So I don't think from the text can you make the point that what was brought was the reason why one was accepted and one wasn't. This is the first time we see humanity initiating contact with God. All other instances, God is engaging with humanity, but here we see humanity trying to engage with God. Abel's offering is accepted, regarded. Cain's is not. Cain gets angry because his offering is not accepted. So that's basically the story, and then God kind of engages him because of his anger. So, question that has been fascinating us throughout the ages, and one of these ideas that we keep coming back to, there's questions in the sin passages in Genesis 1 through 11 that makes us talk about them, that forces us to think about them, that forces us to consider what is really going on here in the story. And sometimes I believe this ambiguity is built in so that we have to think about it. And here, why did God not accept Cain's offering? That's a fascinating question. Drop down in the comments section and see what you would say in that answer. Maybe pause here before I answer it. But I think it has to do with, I think we can see Cain's anger and see there was something wrong with Cain's heart is why it wasn't accepted. Cain expected that his offering would be accepted. He thought, and it may be that he was offering it in order to be accepted. So he was trying to maybe bribe God with this offering so that he could get God's acceptance. Because when he doesn't get God's acceptance, he doesn't try harder, he gets angry. So there's almost this sense that Cain felt he was entitled to God's acceptance, which kind of speaks to this idea that maybe he wasn't offering it to God, but he was trying to use it to bribe God. But the fact that Cain gets angry at God and Abel speaks to the fact that his heart wasn't right going into the offering in the first place. So that brings up the second question: when does Cain first sin? Is it when he brings the unacceptable offering? Is it when he gets mad? Or is it later in the story when he murders his brother and acts out onto that anger? At what point is sin introduced into this story? And it has this fascinating mental picture. Sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. I would love to hear what you have to say about that in the comments below. Those are some of the discussion questions. Would love to engage you around those questions. As always, there are 3 ways to join this: in person Sunday nights at 5 p.m. in the JEMIC, live Monday nights 7 p.m. via Zoom, these weekly wrap-ups on YouTube and or WordPress. I'm all over the social media: Instagram, TikTok, WordPress, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Like, subscribe, follow as appropriate in each of those settings. I enjoyed having this conversation with you. Hopefully it continues real soon.